You know, sometimes a single decision can change the entire trajectory of your business. Not in the way you hope, not with fireworks and headlines, but with sleepless nights, broken trust, and a whole lot of what ifs. I still think about one deal we signed back in, what was it, late 2017. Yeah, I remember it clear as day. One of those moments that looks golden on paper, looks like the opportunity, and man, it almost sank us. I nearly lost the company I'd built with my own hands. And worse, I lost one of the best people I've ever worked with. A friend, a partner. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up a little. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mike. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a mid-sized software company here in Austin, Texas. We build tools for small businesses, CRM systems, accounting software. You know, the stuff that helps keep the wheels turning behind the scenes. We're not flashy, not Silicon Valley unicorns, or anything like that. Just a solid team, helping other businesses run better. We started out in 2008, 3 guys, 2 laptops, 1 tiny office, and by the time this story happened, we were about 80 people strong. 9 years in, stable revenue, great team culture, good momentum. We'd carved out a niche we were proud of, and like anyone in that stage, I was hungry to take it to the next level. You know the feeling. You look around at your peers, other companies raising big rounds, landing big clients. You start thinking, maybe it's time for us to play a bigger game. And then, one day, the phone rings. An opportunity lands in your lap. A big enterprise client, Fortune 500 name. The kind of logo you dream about putting on your homepage. They wanted to license our platform, but with some minor adjustments to suit their internal systems. Minor, they said. Yeah, right. At the time, man, it felt like fate. The timing, the numbers, the chance to break into the enterprise space, all lining up. My gut was, well, conflicted. My team, especially our CTO, my co-founder John, he was cautious. But me, I'll be honest, I was blinded by the upside. The ambition got the better of me. And the rest, well, that's what I want to tell you about today. So stick around. This isn't just a story about a bad deal. It's about leadership, mistakes, trust, and learning the hard way what really matters when you're building a business. And hey, while you're here, if this kind of behind-the-scenes look at real business lessons sounds interesting, hit that like button, drop a comment below, maybe even subscribe. We've got plenty more stories like this coming your way. All right, let's get into it. You know, when people hear CEO of a software company, they usually imagine some kind of tech prodigy or venture-backed hotshot. That was never really me. I came up the old-fashioned way, started as a mid-level manager at a big software firm back in the 90s. Corporate life, suits, long meetings, polished decks, you name it. And I learned a lot there, don't get me wrong. But after a while, I realized I wanted something different, something I could build, something that felt more personal, more connected to the work and to the people around me. In 2008, 2 friends of mine, John, who was a brilliant developer, and Steve, who handled product, well, the 3 of us started talking about how small businesses needed better tools, about how existing software was clunky, expensive, and, well, just not built for the way real people worked. And you know, sometimes those what-if conversations over beers actually turn into something. That's how we started the company. 3 guys, 1 tiny rented office in Austin, 2 used laptops, and a whiteboard full of big ideas. The early years, man, they were scrappy. We worked crazy hours, wore every hat, sales, support, coding, everything. I wasn't some technical genius, but what I did bring was that organizational backbone, the ability to keep us focused, to turn chaos into progress. And that role suited me. I guess by nature I'm someone who cares about people. I like building teams, creating an environment where folks actually want to come to work. I'm not the command from the top kind of guy, more like the older brother trying to keep the family together. By the time 2017 rolled around, we'd been at it almost a decade. The company had grown, about 80 people by then. We had a solid core team. Many of them had been with us since the early days. The vibe was casual. You'd see folks in jeans and t-shirts standing around the kitchen talking shop, bouncing ideas around. And yet, when it came to delivering, this team was sharp. We had customers all over the US using our tools every day. Steady revenue. No investors pushing us to grow faster than we wanted. We could pick our own path, and that meant a lot to me. But, and there's always a but, when you've been running at that mid-level for a while, a part of you starts to itch. You see other companies raising big rounds, landing huge clients, scaling up, and you think, maybe we should be doing that too. Maybe it's time to play in the bigger leagues. That's kind of where my head was in 2017. I was 45 then, not some fresh-faced startup founder anymore, but still with plenty of gas in the tank. I'd made mistakes along the way, sure, but nothing too major, yet. Looking back, I think that hunger, that drive to push the company to a new level, it was what opened the door to the trouble I'm about to tell you about. But at that moment, life was good. I had a great team, a product we believed in, a culture that felt like family. Austin was buzzing, tech was booming, the city was alive with energy. My days were packed, meetings with the team, customer calls, planning new features. Evenings grabbing tacos with John or the crew, talking shop or sometimes just life. It felt like we were on the edge of something big. We just didn't know yet which way it would go. You know, I still remember that morning like it was yesterday. The sunlight filtering through the blinds in our Austin offices, the hum of keyboards in the open plan room, and the unmistakable energy of a team on the brink of something big. It was late October 2017, a crisp Texan fall day, and I'd arrived early, mug of coffee in hand, ready for our weekly planning session. Around me were the faces that had become like family. Sarah in sales, already firing off emails, Carlos on support, hunched over his dual screens, Emma in design, sketching out UI ideas. And then there was John, my co-founder and CTO, leaning back in his chair with that familiar furrowed brow, scanning a slide deck that would change everything. We'd been talking for weeks about pitching to a Fortune 500 prospect, a huge opportunity if we could pull it off. The deal would mean rewriting major parts of our architecture, pulling people off roadmap features, and reallocating resources we'd carefully budgeted 6 months earlier. But the promise of that logo on our site, the Shana True Enterprise status, it was intoxicating. As the rest of the team filtered in, exchanging greetings and grabbing lattes from the little kitchenette, I felt that familiar buzz, excitement, yes, but also a flicker of tension, like the first crack of thunder before a storm. We gathered around the conference table, my old college buddy John on my right, flipping through technical requirements. On my left, Claire from finance, ready with projections and cost analyses. And at the head, me, Mike, CEO and co-founder, trying hard to look both confident and measured. I can still hear my own voice, calm on the surface but with an edge of eagerness. All right, team, this is the moment we've been gearing up for. Today, we go over what it'll take to bring X Corp on board. The room quieted as I clicked through the slides, revenue charts, resource allocation plans, a bold timeline that would stretch us to our limits. John's brow deepened, Claire's lips pressed together. I met John's gaze and nodded, as if saying, we can do this. But in that look I saw a mix of respect and concern. He wasn't just my CTO, he was the guy who'd trudged through late-night server crashes with me, debugged my worst product pivots, and reminded me when I let ambition eclipse reality. And right then, I sensed he was bracing for impact. After the meeting, while the rest of the team dispersed to their corners, Sarah jumping on calls, Emma drafting mock-ups, I pulled John aside in the hallway. The carpet muffled our footsteps, and I could see his jaw set. Mike, he said, voice low, I get how big this could be, but I'm worried about what we're signing up for. We don't have the bandwidth. I remember pausing, looking at his earnest expression. He always wore his heart on his sleeve, and thinking, he's probably right. But what if he's too cautious? I dismissed my hesitation, slapped him on the back, and vowed we'd make it work. Little did I know, that moment of glossing over his doubts planted the seed of every challenge we'd face in the coming months. And there, in that sunlit hallway, surrounded by the familiar sights and sounds of our thriving startup, whiteboards scrawled with feature ideas, sticky notes fluttering in the breeze, the gentle clack of keyboards. I had no idea how close we were to losing not only an opportunity but also the person who'd been beside me since day one. Man, I still remember the day everything started to go sideways. It was early December 2017, just a few weeks after we inked that game-changer enterprise deal, and we were supposed to be on cloud nine, celebrating our entry into the big league, patting ourselves on the back for having the guts to chase something so massive. Instead, I walked into the office feeling this knot in my stomach that I couldn't shake. Our open plan workspace, normally buzzing with casual banter and the clack of keyboards, felt tense, like we'd all suddenly been asked to run a marathon in dress shoes. First sign that something was off was the engineering stand-up that morning, concerns about code stability, warnings that our current architecture simply wasn't designed to support the custom modules the client wanted. John, my CTO and partner since day one, paced back and forth, arms folded, brow furrowed. He looked at me and said, "Mike, we're hitting the wall here. We can't just bolt on features like this without taking everything apart." And that was the moment I felt a chill, because I knew he was right. But I'd already committed the team to ridiculous deadlines to please the client's board. By lunchtime, urgent Slack pings were coming in from product managers and developers, servers crashing under load, data inconsistencies popping up in the test environment, folks working late to patch bugs that kept reappearing. I popped my head into the dev war room, a tangle of cables and half-empty coffee cups, and saw Sarah from sales hovering over Emma in design, both looking frazzled as they tried to juggle new UI specs on top of next sprint's roadmap. I remember thinking, this is not how we do things. Our strength was consistency, predictability. Now it felt like we were firefighting every single day. By day 3, the client had already sent an escalation email demanding updates by end of day, every day. Claire in finance was projecting cost overruns so steep they threatened our quarterly targets. And me? I was torn between owning my decision to push the deal through and wanting to protect the team from the fallout. I found myself staying late, pacing the hallway outside John's office, replaying our hallway conversation where he'd urged caution, feeling the weight of his initial warning. The dilemma was crystal clear. Either we admit our mistake, renegotiate scope and timeline, risking our relationship with this important client, or we double down, stretch the team even thinner, and hope we somehow pull off a miracle. I won't lie, there were moments when I questioned if I still had what it takes to lead. Every time I looked at John's empty desk after he went home earlier than usual, guilt gnawed at me. I could see in my mind his disappointment, not just in the deal itself, but in me, his friend and co-founder. Meanwhile, the rest of the company was watching. Rumors started swirling. Is the leadership team losing it? And I knew morale was eroding faster than code releases. Our once tight-knit crew now moved from station to station with wary glances, as though stepping into a minefield. The stress hit its peak one evening when an all-hands Slack thread blew up with complaints about unrealistic expectations, missed deadlines, and burnout. I remember staring at the screen, heart pounding, realizing that what started as one big opportunity was now turning into a full-blown crisis. And in that moment, I felt a surge of responsibility like never before, the need to make a call that would either save the company or break it for good. That's when I understood that leadership isn't about chasing every shiny opportunity. It's about knowing when to slow down, when to listen, and when to protect the people who've got your back. But back then, caught in the adrenaline rush, I hadn't yet learned the full weight of that lesson. Man, the moment everything came to a head happened one Friday afternoon in early January 2018, right in the middle of our all-hands company meeting. We'd spent weeks scrambling to satisfy the demands of that enterprise client, rewriting entire modules, pushing our people to the edge, and still, every demo felt like a train wreck waiting to happen. That day, I'd managed to secure a video call with the client's executive steering committee, the very people whose logo we'd dreamed of showcasing on our website. The conference room was packed. John sat stiffly at my right elbow, his laptop open to error locks. Claire hovered by the corner, her tablet pinging with budget overruns, and half the engineering team hovered just outside, peering through the glass walls like anxious spectators. I remember standing at the front, heart thumping so loud I was sure they could hear it. I clicked share screen, summoned our demo build, and began walking them through the custom pipeline we'd promised, lines of code that were supposed to fly, new dashboards that were supposed to shine, integrations we'd sold as effortless. 2 minutes in, the UI froze. Then the server spat back an error cascade so vicious it would have made any dev cringe. The client's faces popped up on screen, in pairs of curious anticipation turning to incredulous frowns. My throat went dry. I tried to navigate back to a stable page, but the system rebelled again, hanging completely. Behind me, I felt John's hand on my shoulder, a silent warning that this was beyond a hiccup. Claire opened her mouth to defend our performance, but I shook my head, signaling her to stay quiet. We were on live video, and nothing we said could mask the malfunction playing out in real time. Then came the clincher. The head of IT for that Fortune 500 company leaned forward, tilted his head, and calmly said, "Is this a demo or an early warning?" There was a hush so heavy I could almost feel the weight of every key still clicking in our office. My pulse was pounding in my ears, and in that crushingly silent second, I saw it in John's eyes, a mixture of hurt, frustration, and deep disappointment. The partner I trusted, the friend who had built so much of our success, looked at me as though I'd let him down personally. I felt my knees go weak. When the call abruptly ended, no goodbye, no we'll circle back, just a lifeless click, I stood there, staring at a blank screen. The room felt colder. And then John exhaled, a rattling sigh that echoed through the glass walls. He slammed his laptop shut, pushed back his chair so hard it scraped against the floor, and stood up. I heard a sob from someone in the back row, somebody we'd all mentored and cheered on. Claire put a hand over her mouth, tears in her eyes. And then John turned to face me, voice quivering but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Mike, I can't keep doing this." In that moment, the world tilted. It wasn't just about a failed demo or an angry client. It was about trust broken, relationships strained to the breaking point, and the realization that my ambition had cost us everything we'd built together. People in the room gasped. Some backed away. A few rubbed their eyes, unable to believe what was unfolding. John shut the door behind him and walked out, leaving a stunned silence that lasted long after his footsteps faded. And in that silence, I understood something fundamental, that the real crisis wasn't code or contract, it was leadership gone astray. I stayed there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the empty doorway, heart pounding, sweat beading on my forehead. This was the climax of our story, the high-stakes moment of drama and shock, the one scene every entrepreneur fears and every leader dreads. It was seared into my memory, an indelible reminder that one misstep, one broken promise, could unravel everything you've poured your heart into. And as the team slowly gathered around me, I searching mine for answers, I knew that what I did next would determine whether we survived or crumbled under the weight of our own choices. I walked out of that silent conference room feeling like I'd been punched in the gut, but I knew there was no time to dwell on the fall. The next morning, I showed up before anyone else, heart heavy but determined. I found Claire in her office, poring over budget spreadsheets, eyes red from late-night revisions. "Claire," I said, voice rough, "we need to fix this." And honestly, I didn't have a clear plan, just a conviction that we had to own up and make things right. We drafted an honest, humble email to our client, acknowledging the demo failure, proposing a revised timeline, and outlining steps we'd take to stabilize our platform before adding any custom layers. Hitting send felt like stepping off a cliff, but within an hour I saw the client's reply, a curt request for a call. John and I prepped together. This time I listened more than I spoke. When the video link lit up later that day, I started with, "We screwed up, and this is how we plan to make it right." It wasn't a pitch, it was a pledge. To our surprise, the client appreciated the transparency. They granted us an extra 6 weeks on the condition we hit incremental milestones. That agreement was the turning point, proof that trust could be rebuilt when you lead with integrity. Meanwhile, inside the company, I called an all-hands meeting. I stood in front of our team, people I'd come to see as family, and admitted my mistake. I told them I apologized for pushing us into a corner, that their dedication under such pressure was nothing short of heroic, and that from now on, we'd rewrite not only code, but also how we make decisions. I announced a freeze on enterprise deals until we had a repeatable process for scale, A new cross-functional review board including senior engineers and product managers in mandatory pause points before any strategic pivot. You could feel the weight lift in the room. I saw nods, half smiles, relief. Some even clapped. John, who had been standing at the edge of the room, looked at me and gave a small, wry grin, the kind that said, "About time." Over the next weeks, we rallied. The atmosphere shifted from frantic exhaustion to focused collaboration. We rebuilt the modules in manageable sprints, celebrating every successful integration test. Sarah and sales started pitching the revised roadmap confidently, and our customer support queue stabilized. There were still late nights, but instead of stress-fueled meltdowns, we had whiteboard sessions spiked with laughter and shared pizza boxes. And through it all, John was there, architecting solutions, mentoring junior devs, reminding me to keep the big picture in mind without losing sight of daily realities. The CTO who almost walked away became the driving force in our comeback. As for the client, by spring 2018, we delivered the custom features on time and on spec. They extended our contract, and although their logo did appear on our homepage for a brief moment, the real win was the process we built and the respect we regained. Looking back, that crisis and how it resolved taught me more than any boardroom victory ever could. I learned that leadership isn't about charging ahead as a lone visionary. It's about creating a culture where voices are heard, where admitting uncertainty is a strength, and where you protect your people as fiercely as you pursue growth. Today, our company still helps hundreds of small businesses run smoothly. We're more cautious about enterprise deals, yes, but we're also more confident in our ability to deliver because we've tested ourselves in the fire and emerged stronger. And John? Well, he's still my co-founder and CTO, but now he's also my compass, the friend who will nudge me back when ambition tries to blind me again. That's how it all wrapped up, not with fireworks or fanfare, but with humility, teamwork, and a renewed commitment to doing things the right way. And every time I walk past that conference room, I smile because I remember how close we came to losing it all and how we chose, collectively, to fight our way back. You know, in the weeks and months that followed, I felt this strange mix of relief and restlessness, like I'd survived the storm but was still learning how to stand in the calm afterward. There were mornings when I'd wake up and catch myself replaying those raw moments in the conference room, the flicker of hope in the client's eyes, John's parting words echoing in my mind. But those memories weren't as sharp or painful as they once were. Instead, they had settled into a quiet reminder of how fragile success can be without trust and communication. On a personal level, I realized I'd carried a weight of guilt that I didn't even know was there. I'd been so focused on growth metrics, revenue targets, and landing big logos that I'd lost sight of what had built this company in the first place, people who believed in a shared vision and looked out for each other. In the aftermath, I made it a habit to pause more often, to check in not just on project statuses, but on how folks were really doing. I started carving out time every Friday for one-on-one walks with team members, just 30 minutes of walking the corridors or grabbing coffee, talking about life as much as work. That simple practice quickly became a highlight of my week. I saw colleagues open up about burnout they'd hidden, ideas they'd been too afraid to share, and even personal challenges they were navigating. Those conversations didn't just build empathy, they sparked innovations and improved collaboration in ways no spreadsheet ever could. For me, the experience also shifted my perspective on risk. I still chase opportunities, there's nothing wrong with ambition, but now I measure every potential deal against a set of values we codified together: respect for process, clear communication, and the well-being of our team. If a project threatens any of those, it doesn't move forward. And sometimes that means telling a tempting prospect, "Not yet," or "Let us come back when we're ready." It feels strange at first, turning down growth, but knowing I'm protecting our culture makes the decision easy, and the peace of mind that follows is worth far more than any logo on a web page. On a deeper level, I learned about resilience. Not the kind that glamorizes late nights and heroic scrambles, but the kind that comes from owning mistakes, listening when it hurts, and adapting before it's too late. Today, when I look at our team, happier, more engaged, and united, I feel proud in a way I never did when we chased the next big thing. That season of crisis left its mark, but it also gave me my compass back. And for that, I'm deeply grateful. You know, if there's one thing I took away from that whole ordeal, it's that ambition without grounding is a dangerous mix. Chasing the biggest deal on the table might feel exhilarating in the moment, but if it comes at the cost of the people who got you here, it's not a win, it's a loss. I learned that leadership isn't about ironclad decisions made in isolation, it's about orchestrating a conversation where every voice has weight. I discovered that admitting uncertainty doesn't show weakness, it builds trust. I realized that a pause point before diving headfirst into any major shift isn't a bureaucratic hurdle, but a lifeline that keeps us anchored to our core values. On a personal level, I understood that success isn't defined by logos on a website or revenue spikes, but by the resilience of a team that stays together through thick and thin. I saw that humility, the willingness to say I was wrong, can be the most powerful catalyst for change. Finally, I came to appreciate that real growth happens not when you sprint toward the next milestone, but when you learn to walk steadily, listening to the people around you, valuing process as much as outcome, and protecting the culture you've built. That lesson didn't come from a textbook or a TED Talk. It came from staring down the barrel of a self-inflicted crisis and choosing to rebuild stronger. These days, whenever a shiny opportunity comes knocking, I pause, I reflect, and I ask myself, does this move us forward without leaving anyone behind? And the answer guides every decision I make. In the end, that's the lesson that stuck with me. Ambition is essential, but integrity is everything. You know, that story quickly became part of our company folklore, something people still reference in all-hands meetings when a tempting opportunity comes up. We even joke about pulling a mic whenever someone suggests chasing a big deal without proper vetting. And that lighthearted reference speaks volumes about how deeply the experience reshaped our culture. In the months after we righted the ship, word got around among our peers in Austin's tech community. Other founders would ask me for war stories over coffee, and I found myself sharing the same cautionary tale. How nearly losing your co-founder over a rushed contract can teach more than any victory lap. Internally, the changes we made stuck. We institutionalized our pause points in cross-functional reviews, and those rituals became second nature. I noticed new hires, developers, sales reps, product managers, coming on board already aware of the story, almost like an initiation rite. They'd arrive talking about transparent communication and respect for process because that's what we'd lived through together. And interestingly, I realized I never ran into that same kind of all-consuming rush again. Not because I stopped chasing growth, I didn't, but because I learned to temper it with patience and perspective. I found myself scrutinizing every proposal. What is the impact on our roadmap? How will this affect our team's work-life balance? Does this move align with our values? And when the answers weren't clear, I would literally step back, convene my co-founders, and say, let's sleep on it. That simple change of pace saved us from a few potentially painful missteps down the line. For John and me, our partnership emerged stronger. We moved into a rhythm where he'd flag technical concerns up front, and I'd make sure his voice carried equal weight in strategic discussions. Our friendship deepened because we honored each other's expertise and vulnerability, and our team saw that dynamic play out as a model of healthy collaboration. Looking back now, years later, I realized that the crisis didn't just teach me lessons, it gave our company an identity. We're still growing, still launching new features, and still landing important clients, but with a foundation built on trust, thoughtful process, and mutual respect. The story of that near disaster remains a guidepost, a reminder that the right way to scale isn't always the fastest, that good culture requires active tending, and that success is a journey you share with people who believe in you. And every once in a while, I'll catch someone smiling as they say, "Don't pull a mic," and I know that our legend lives on, and for me, that's one of the greatest outcomes I could have hoped for. All right, so that's my story, how a single contract almost tore apart everything we'd built, and how we clawed our way back by embracing honesty, pausing to listen, and putting people before profit. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a moment where ambition blinded you to the risks, or where you watched someone you trusted walk away because you pushed too hard? What did you learn when you hit that breaking point, and how did it change the way you lead, work, or live? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's get real about those moments that don't make the headlines but shape us more than any victory ever could. Because at the end of the day, the toughest lessons aren't the ones we celebrate, they're the ones we brave together, scars and all. So tell me, what's your almost brokest story, and what did it teach you about what really matters? I can't wait to read your experiences and learn alongside you. See you down below.